Here we go.
All right. We good.
Okay, call the meeting to order. Closed session reports.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
All right, if we could have Ron Fujiwaki lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ron. You did excellent. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Litzter?
Here.
Councilmember Luevanos?
Here.
Councilmember Kavanaugh?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Judge?
Here.
Mayor Mashburn?
Here.
Thank you.
And point out that Mayor Pro Tem Judge is here telephonically.
Mayor Pro Tem Judge is present telephonically. Thank you.
Okay, here we are in August 2020, and we continue to deal with the coronavirus. With the continuing of COVID positive cases and the continued orders by the state of California and the Ventura County Public Health Officer, Simi Valley and other 9 cities in the county continue to hold their council meetings without the public in attendance. Although the public is not here, there are still opportunities for the listening public to participate in this council meeting. The public statements procedure has been the same since our April 6, 2020 meeting. As noticed on the agenda, the public was encouraged to submit emails concerning tonight's agenda. For emails submitted prior to 12 noon today, those emails have been provided to us. They will be made part of the record, but will not be read by the city clerk tonight. We have 2 opportunities for public statements this evening. The first opportunity is to comment on agenda item 2, appointments, special presentations, and informational reports. If you wish to make a comment on appointments, special presentations, and informational reports portion of the agenda, emails received after 12 noon today up to the beginning of this agenda item will be read by the city clerk this evening. Emails should be sent to the city clerk's office at public statements with plural, at simivalley.org. Include in the subject line agenda item number 2 and should be limited to 250 words or less. At the beginning of this agenda item, email receipt will be closed. Subsequently, the city will read the emails received for a period of 30 minutes. Every effort will be made to read all emails into the record, but some emails may not be read due to time limitations. Emails received after the beginning of this agenda item or unread emails will be made part of the record if received prior to the end of the meeting. The second opportunity is agenda item number 5, public statements item on the agenda. The same procedure will be used for public statements. Emails received after 12 noon today up to the beginning of this agenda item will be read by the city clerk this evening. Emails should be sent to the city clerk's office at public statements, that's plural statements, at simivalley.org. So if I don't want to confuse anybody, public statements at simivalley.org. Include in the subject line agenda item number 5, limited to 250 words. At the beginning of this agenda item, email receipt will be closed. No new emails will be received and read. The city clerk will begin to read the emails received since noon today, spending 3 minutes on each email. The city clerk will spend 30 minutes total reading emails. For those emails that are not read, they will be entered into the record. So right now, you can still send emails that may be read during the meeting for agenda items 2 and 5. The city thanks you for your patience. During this local emergency, the city is making every attempt to continue to allow the public to participate in the business of the city. With that said, we can move on with the meeting. City Clerk, you may continue. I'll continue. Did everybody review the agenda? Are there any items that need to be changed?
I'm sorry, Mayor, let me get the agenda item. I had asked the clerk for some more background with regard to item, with regard to item 8A, but I know the clerk has been short-staffed and very busy with all that's going on right now. Is there any way that we could postpone that so I could get more background information? And our city manager also was not here.
What
for me to ask a
item was it?
question. Item 8A.
I can address any questions you may have.
Okay, yeah, because it was regarding the history of the creation of the CIAC committee, and,
Sure.
and since you were on vacation last week and the clerk was really, really overwhelmed, I wanted to read over the minutes of how it was created and why it was created and what its purpose was to get more, because it's not in the staff report. And that's why I'm requesting if it can be postponed so that we can have time to review that material. Is that possible, Mayor?
I don't have a problem with it.
We can certainly delay it, not a problem.
Thank you, I would appreciate that.
Sure. Okay, so that'll be the change on the agenda, as we'll delay agenda item 8A.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And then I will move that all resolutions and ordinances presented tonight be read in title only and all further reading be waived.
Motion, we need a second.
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 Okay, motion and second, call for the vote when our lights start blinking. There we go.
Go ahead and vote yes for me, please.
Motion passes unanimously.
Let's see. Okay, does anybody have a declaration of conflict tonight? Seeing none? Okay, no conflicts?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, there are no items tonight under Agenda Item 1D, certificates, honorary resolutions, or proclamations. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is Item 2, public statements on appointments, special presentations, and informational reports. And we have no public statements under Item 2. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is Item 3A1, selection of City Council members to interview and nominate prospective Neighborhood Council Executive Board members, and Emily Habib is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. Neighborhood Council Executive Board members are appointed to alternating two-year terms with approximately one-third of the seats expiring every 8 months. The next term of appointments is scheduled to commence on November 1st, 2020. A general recruitment to fill 15 positions was initiated on July 13th, 2020, and concluded on August 2nd, 2020. The city received a total of 62 applications, 19 for Neighborhood Council 1, 14 for Neighborhood Council 2, 12 for Neighborhood Council 3, and 17 for Neighborhood Council 4. In previous recruitment cycles, the City Council has selected 2 subcommittees, each consisting of 2 City Council members. In September 2019, Mayor Pro Tem Judge and Councilmember Litster interviewed and nominated prospective Executive Board members for Neighborhood Councils 2 and 4. In October 2019, Council members Kavanaugh and Luevanos interviewed and nominated prospective Executive Board members for Neighborhood Councils 1 and 3. Staff is recommending that the City Council select 2 subcommittees, each comprised of 2 City Council members, to interview and nominate prospective Neighborhood Council Executive Board members. This concludes staff's report, and staff would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'd like to volunteer. We need 2 subcommittees, so obviously I'd not.
I would also like to volunteer.
I would also.
I would also like to volunteer.
Okay, so,
I think I have 5 volunteers.
wow, it pays so well.
It does.
Yes.
Can I ask a question before we resolve who's doing this? I noticed that Neighborhood Council number 4 has 17 applicants, but if we go with the scenario as presented, there would be 0 vacancies. Would Neighborhood Council 4 still be interviewed, all 17, even though there would not be a placement made?
At this point, I would actually recommend informing the applicants that we have no openings, because the next recruitment is for a term beginning March 1st next year, so in 4 months after the beginning of this term, and interviewing them perhaps January of next year, if there's no openings.
So if we stayed with the scenario presented, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's just a good point to make.
Mayor?
I'd like to volunteer for, was it 3 and 4? 1 and 2, 3 and 4?
Yes, in this case, it's 1, 2, and 3.
Because 4 has no
Because-
openings.
Correct.
Okay, so I don't care.
Mayor,
I was just being selfish because I live in 4, I think.
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Sure.
I appreciate the staff report, but it would have been nice to have kind of a matrix of, which term, how many people's terms end when, and when the next term begins, like what you just laid out for me. For us as a city council, it would have been nice to know, because, when people saw the report and people were calling me and asking, why is there 0 from Neighborhood Council 4? There's no explanation in the staff report of why there are no vacancies there. And I think there's confusion as to, the 1/3 of the terms expiring every 8 months. And so there's a lot of questions to the public, and I think that's what the confusion was, and why you got 17 applications for Neighborhood Council 4. I've also heard it said that, you can always submit your application. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what people were saying to me, that, you can submit your application, and they didn't know if that application, even though there's no vacancies now, if that would be held for the next term, like for January, if they have to reapply again. So I'm asking for clarification, not necessarily for me, but for the public, because these are all questions that I've gotten. And like I said, I would have liked a little more detail in the staff report, and I think if we had had that, there might not have been so many questions. So can you break it down?
What I can do is refer you to item 8B. If you look ahead to item 8B, and I apologize, page 3 has the vacancies and the current members and their terms. So that'll get you, I think, what you're looking for. On page 3 of the staff report, there's a matrix.
I know, but I don't think the public knew to look there and knew to know.
No, I would agree.
They would have said, if I didn't know to look,
Sure.
I knew it was related, but, and I think other people were struggling to figure out why are there no vacancies in 4, or when those terms expire, and what that means, because I think there was also concern that there's, are there just going to be all new people, for Neighborhood Council 4 at a certain point in time. And what I was trying to explain, and that's why I was asking you to explain now, is that, it rotates so that you don't always have a brand new group of people in the Neighborhood Council, so that you have some older members with newer members. So that's what I was explaining, but probably not eloquently as you would be able to do, Emily. So that's why I was asking if you could, explain that.
All right, so the Neighborhood Council Executive Boards, you serve a 2-year term, and there are 13, when the boards are full, there are 13 executive board members. So in order to bring new people on a regular basis, and to have them able to learn from the veterans who've been on, what we do is we recruit every 8 months. We hopefully turn over about 1/3 of the seats, which is 4 or 5 typically. So we have people rotating off and people rotating on every 8 months. So there's normally a mix of approximately 2/3 veterans and 1/3 new members.
Excuse me. Is that feedback from Mike?
Yes.
Hey, Mike, Mr. Judge,
What?
we're getting a lot of scratch or something from, we think, your telephone. A
All
lot
right, I'll put it on mute.
of feedback. I'm sorry.
Is that kind of the explanation? I can also tell you that we do accept applications year-round. We encourage people to apply anytime they think about it. And what we inform them is that your application will be held until the next recruitment.
Okay, so that answers the question that I had, but I just want to clarify. So the people that applied for Neighborhood Council 4 that has no vacancies, they'll be considered in January for
Yes.
the March opening?
Yes.
So they would not have to reapply?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Because that was the question. And I even looked on the website, I'm like, I'm not seeing this answer. I'm sure that Emily knows, but I'll ask. But I just wanted to clarify that, so the people who did apply don't think that they have to reapply again, that they'll be able to. And would that apply for Neighborhood Council 1, 2, and 3 as well, or no? If they don't get chosen this round, will they have to reapply again?
No. What we normally do is we hold their application and we contact them again prior to the next recruitment, and just to confirm that, yes, they are still interested in being on the executive board. And if they are, then we put them back into the recruitment process.
Okay, thank you. And my other question was, and I'm not sure if it's addressed here or not, but, you know, we are in the middle of this pandemic. We are in the middle of a huge economic crisis in our country as well. And there are people that are moving and leaving, and, you know, they're downsizing. And, you know, I know people that are moving with their parents and moving, you know, back with their children and things like that. So if someone should move and no longer qualify to be in that neighborhood council at the time when they're appointed, what happens?
What happens is when they are contacted to determine if they are still interested in being on an executive board, normally the question is asked, has anything changed in the last so many months? Have you relocated, anything like that? So the question comes up, although nearly always they bring it up immediately.
Okay.
And say, I've relocated, but we ask the question just in case.
Okay, that was my other concern, because even between now and, you know, when the interviews take place and they're appointed, it could change and it could shift. And if that happens, then would there be more interviews then for those spaces that are open? Like if someone, you know, moves to a different area, and so, you know, because we are on the brink of a number of people that are living paycheck to paycheck and may be evicted like next month.
Mm-hmm.
So if they move, and there is an opening, and that, let's say we did the interviews and they got appointed, right, for the neighborhood council, but they moved in between, what would happen? Would we hold more interviews, or would that just be a vacant position?
So you're saying after they are appointed?
Yes.
Then they move to another neighborhood council district?
Yes, or just out of the city, period, like they're just no longer.
Well, if
yeah.
they move out of the city, they're not eligible to be on the executive boards at all because they're not a Simi Valley resident. That's
Okay.
one of the criteria. If they do move to a different neighborhood council district, yes, they have to come off the board that they're on, and they can reapply in their new district.
Okay. I just wanted to, and I'm sorry to ask you so many questions. I just, we're on shifting sand right here financially for a lot of people, and I just want to make sure that people are aware. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, I'm willing to work with whomever's willing to work with me.
I will. I'd like to do one at least, because that's going to be my new district.
Okay.
So if we at least do one.
Of course, I'd love to do 3 for
I'll
that
do
same
whatever
reason.
one.
Do we want to,
Okay, so,
would that be a
Let-
conflict of interest to
No.
have people interview in the district that they're at, or should we,
I would certainly not think so.
should we?
Don't believe it's a conflict
Because we have
of
enough
interest.
It's
people.
not,
No?
okay.
Okay, to
no
interview people
conflict of
in your
interest,
district?
so- Okay, so.
Since we're only interviewing for 3 councils, we only need 2 council members. Why don't we just minimize the workload there?
Yeah, all right, so Dee Dee and I are one subcommittee.
And I can work with Elaine.
I think you have 5 people.
You have 5, yeah.
I'll go with Elaine.
Let me just ask something, and I appreciate, I'd love to work with all of you, so whomever, it's absolutely fine, absolutely fine. One of the discussions, and obviously we'll be discussing this in 8B when we get there, is there any desire to, our code says 7 to 13 slots to be filled. That's what the code says. Now, because of the way, the movement and the way this all occurred, it means in section, for instance, in our third neighborhood 3, we have only 3 basically incumbents. And so my question is there a desire to possibly modify the code just temporarily so that we can have a larger group just in this transition period, or do we want to absolutely stay that we never go above that 13 level?
I'm taking staff's recommendation that I don't think now's the time to revamp.
I think that would be a discussion for the 8B
For eight.
item.
Okay, and I guess the reason I brought it up now, because
Yeah.
that might affect 4, and then there'd be,
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
At this time, all we're asking is interview panels of council members.
Gotcha.
There you
Okay,
go.
That's
fair
it.
enough.
We can decide how many to appoint when this comes back in October. And if you want to change the size of the board, you can certainly do that as part of 8B as well.
Okay, and then we have.
Could I suggest then
We have one board, okay, one subcommittees, and the other one, and there's a tie of sorts, and I would think the fair way is to look and see who was the most recent and go to the one that has been the longest period of time since they've been on the interview board. And I have no idea.
Well, and I wondered, is it
it's equal.
possible for me to work with Mike on 2 and work with Ruth on 3? Would that be possible to do it that way?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
Is that all right? I mean,
yeah, I don't see
I
why.
think that could be a Brown Act issue as far as spanning. Now you've got kind of 3 council members. You can have less than a quorum together, but if you start getting a way of looking at 3, it's something that had come up in some staff discussions
Oh,
last week.
interesting.
And we
Okay,
said, let's
never
not.
mind.
Now, I would say, I believe it is possible, and if you're not interested, that's fine, to have a 2, and a 1. Like, that's never been done before, but you could have 3 committees, 1 of 1, if that's something that you want to consider. But you'd have to decide who interviews whom.
I would be fine interviewing by myself, either 1 or 2.
I think what Lonnie's saying is because we only have 3 neighborhood councils, we need an interviewer.
Mm-hmm.
One panel can interview for neighborhood council 1, one panel can interview for neighborhood council 2, and then third
And the
panel interview for
leftover person.
interfacial 3.
Yeah.
Right. So it'd be 2, 2, and 1.
Yeah,
Okay, do you want to do it that way? If that's okay?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I would suggest that one of the 2-person panels do neighborhood council 3, since it's 10. And whoever's going to be by themselves, whether it's me or whoever, would do 1 or 2.
But we're only choosing 5 on 3, correct? Yeah, even though it says there are 10 vacancies, we're only choosing 5 people.
Okay.
Because
So
of the terms.
What we need to do is amend the motion, say, select 3 subcommittees.
Let me ask this. Councilmember Levenos volunteered to interview by herself.
Yes,
So you could have the shorter 12. There's 12 applicants in 3,
yeah, that's fine.
unless there's a request for anyone else to be in 3.
I was hoping to be in 3, but
So
Oh, okay.
Dee Dee and I will do 1.
Then we have Mike and Elaine for
2?
2.
although I was hoping to do 3, just because
Unless you wanna do
where
2 by yourself.
I'm living, but whatever is fine.
I'm fine doing 2 by myself.
Okay, so, I mean, if you really want to do,
Either way is fine. It really does.
well, it'll be part of the, I think what we're trying to craft the motion that
Sure.
we would have council members, Councilmember Luevanos would do 2, Councilmember Litzter and Mayor Pro Tem Judge would do 3.
So I see your point is that there are more applicants in 2.
Yeah.
Is that, I see.
Sounds
Okay,
like,
then I'm happy to do 2 with,
Well,
it's
let
fine.
him do it. He's going to put you in 3rd.
Okay, whatever you want.
That's what you want.
But I'd rather do number 2.
There you go.
Then I'll do 3 by myself.
I decided for you. Yeah, I'm fine doing 3, that's fine. It doesn't.
Okay, so does anybody have that motion?
Okay.
I think 1 is Mashburn and Kavanaugh, correct?
That is.
Okay, so we got 1 down. 2 is
Mike and Elaine?
Correct.
Mike and Elaine.
Okay, you want me to make the motion?
If you're ready.
I move to select 3 subcommittees. 2 of the subcommittees comprised of 2 city council members, and 1 subcommittee comprised of 1 council member to interview and nominate 5 prospective neighborhood council executive board members to each board. Is that right?
I think it's right.
probably should specify what that whole
Okay.
setting.
With Mayor Mashburn and Councilmember Kavanaugh to do Neighborhood Council 1, Mayor Pro Tem Judge and Councilwoman Elaine Lister to do Neighborhood Council 2, and myself, Councilwoman Luevnos, to do Neighborhood Council 3.
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second. I'll second it. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
I vote yes.
Got it.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everyone. That worked out.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we do not have any items for special presentations or informational reports. For item number 4, public hearings, all land use public hearings are postponed due to the county stay-at-well-at-home order and to ensure an appropriate opportunity for public input. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 5. This is the time for public statements on all items other than public hearings, appointments, and information reports. All comments submitted by email prior to 12 p.m. noon today have been provided to the City Council and will be made part of the record. However, they will not be read by the City Clerk at this meeting. Comments received by email after 12 p.m. noon today up until the beginning of this public statements item of the agenda will now be read for a period of 30 minutes, spending 3 minutes on each email. Every effort will be made to read all emails into the record, but some emails may not be read due to time limitations. Emails received after the beginning of public statements or unread emails will be made part of the record if received prior to the end of this meeting. The City Council members may offer a response to the extent possible under Agenda Item 5A. Mr. Mayor, unless you have any other comments, we can begin reading the emails.
Mayor, can I ask for the record how many public comments we did receive? I just want to know if they were going to see the 30 minutes.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
32?
So we're only going to read 30 minutes worth of emails?
Yes.
3 minutes for each, so 10 emails?
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just wanted to clarify. And the rest of the emails will be forwarded to us, yes? Thank you.
Yes, we, the ones before and any that come after.
Okay.
The first one is from Linda Tran. You may not be racist, but you enable it, Mr. Mashburn. You say you don't tolerate racism, yet it took weeks for a judge to be disavowed, and he hasn't been held accountable for his actions. After he publicly disclosed someone's name without consent, she received threats. Judge should watch the video and seriously reflect on the fact that he doxed a young citizen 1/3 his age. Dr. B's research class. Dear City Council, I have just learned about a horrible assault on one of the elderly of our community. A Latina was attacked in her home by a man named David Siminsky. Apparently, her son fended Siminsky off, but he later returned with a baseball bat shouting, "White power." I have also learned that Siminsky was only charged with burglary. This is unacceptable. I would urge the council to take action to ensure that the DA files appropriate charges, including a hate crime. Siminsky was previously arrested for a similar crime. Mayor Mashburn, Siminsky is not a knucklehead. He is a dangerous man. This was not a bad move. This was a crime. Sincerely, Dr. Safia Bagdassaran. Next one is Aleya Ewing. Dear City Council, 4 of you like to pretend racism doesn't exist in Simi Valley, despite our national reputation for it. But time and time again, the racists prove you are wrong. Just this Saturday, a Latina woman was attacked and beaten in her own home by a white supremacist, David Siminsky, who was heard yelling, "White power." A few days before that, an Asian woman was threatened and harassed while walking her dog. The man was yelling racist stereotypes, including that she was going to eat her dog. Then he threatened to shoot her dog. After calling the police, they told her there was nothing that they could do and to just go home. The same night, she and her husband were threatened by a man with a baseball bat. Both of these actions were hate crimes, and both happened in Simi Valley. The four of you can continue hiding under your rock of white ignorance, but people of color have to face racism in Simi Valley every day. Your words and promises mean nothing when there is no action or truth behind them. I hope the four of you are all ashamed of yourselves for contributing to Simi's racist culture. We will not forget this in November. To the people of Simi Valley, take action. Sincerely, Alea Ewing. Mr. Mashburn and current Simi Council. Simi has a racism problem among so many problems. It is called systemic racism because it infiltrates every inch of a city, district, school, department, program, and appointment. It's just, quotes, the way of life is. If this works for you, some raised and educated in this manner will question, research, and explore. Learning the world is much bigger than me or us. I say now, before my comment read, this is not an issue that needs to be tangled in with budget issues, pensions, reallocation of budget, etc., since there are also the problems in our city related to the police department. Those who want racism and diversity addressed also very much respect the police and their role in communities. Do not use them as a shield to not see and hear us. Some struggle in an evolving world with change and growing diversity. It can be uncomfortable. Why look deeper if the way of life works for you? A smaller, cumbersome world of we do not get that many POC applications anyway. And do we need a list of Black-owned businesses? We don't have any. It's a mentality that is in glaring question now. If you could try to sidestep personal biases and limited experiences, skip the long-winded, very empty denials long enough to hear the voices in front of you before and after June 6th. Please recognize beyond the scuttlebutt circulating at the numerous foundations you sit on, beyond your circle of friends, high school mascots, businesses, and even what your one Black friend tells you, racism is a problem in the city of Simi Valley. We've reached the word limit on that one. That is from CJJ 062666. From Cassandra Douglas. Mayor Mashburn, in the last city council meeting, you said that you think there are a couple of knuckleheads in Simi Valley that contribute to racism here. I wonder if you have the cognitive ability to recognize how racist and dismissive your statement was. Since you saying that there have been several people who have had the courage to speak up about racism that they have experienced in this city, have you taken the time to listen to them? I am a child of a Mexican mother. My biological father was a violent, racist white man, and I had a racist white grandparents who would make me stick my elbows in lemons to lighten the color of pigmented elbows, and told my sister and I that children of mixed races had mental disabilities. This happened not 2 blocks from City Hall and made me feel ashamed for being a Latina for the longest time. This is a small example of the pain I endured in this city, and it is very minimal compared to the hate that others have received. The people of color in the city that you are elected as mayor are crying out for you to listen, and you are ignoring us. This is something that will be remembered in November. This past weekend, there was a hate crime against a Latina woman in our own town. How are you going to handle this? Are you going to dismiss this as just another knucklehead goofing around? Check and acknowledge your privilege. Put some action behind your words. Also, Mike Judge, you need to resign. Cassandra Dela Cruz. And Garth Aaron. This is a yes or no question for each member on the City Council. Black Lives Matter. Everyone can agree on that. Facts about the BLM organization, they, and all these are bullet points, are anti-Second Amendment, are anti-police, believe in defunding the police, want to disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure, chanted pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon during riots when BLM was first forming, believe that there is a state-sponsored violence without evidence. The founders are self-proclaimed Marxists, selected George Floyd as a martyr who, these are sub-bullets, was intoxicated with fentanyl and had recently used methamphetamine, did not follow the officer's instructions, in 1998 spent 10 months behind bars for theft, in 2002 spent 8 months behind bars for cocaine, in 2004 spent 10 months behind bars for cocaine, in 2005 spent 10 months behind bars for cocaine, in 2007 spent 5 years behind bars for armed robbery. During one of these activities, he pointed a gun at a woman's stomach. Some reports say she was pregnant. Everyone agrees he did not deserve to die the way he did, but the world may be a better place without him. The BLM organization, bullet points under this, never mentions that 60% of black children do not have fathers in the household and why that is a bad thing, is promoting equal outcome, not equal opportunity. New paragraph. Again, Black Lives Matter. Everyone can agree on that. But do you, council members for the city of Simi Valley, support the BLM organization? P.S. I have references for each of these facts, but I am limited to 250 words. Vanessa Guerrero. At the last city council meeting, Mayor Mashburn said that Simi Valley doesn't have a problem with racists. We just have some knuckleheads. Other members of the city council echo the same sentiment. While white-splaining to the only person of color on city council about racism and attempting to discredit her claims of experience with racism. Today, I learned that days after this meeting, a white male, David Siminsky, attacked a Latina woman in her home with a baseball bat while shouting, "White power." I learned that this woman was his neighbor and that he will be released. I learned that the crime that he was charged with was burglary. This is, in fact, a hate crime. When the police department hoards nearly half of our city budget, we expect that they are doing a diligent job. It is frustrating to hear that they do not properly file police reports and attempt to cover up hate crimes. This is not a one-time only incident in which they have done so. When I was a minor, I was attacked by an adult white supremacist. The hate crime committed against me was not reported as a hate crime by the police. Writing a nice letter about denouncing racism doesn't mean anything if these instances are just chalked up to being knuckleheads, or if we don't listen to the voices of the people who have experienced racism, or if we continue to allow the police department to file false reports. You are not doing a good job. And the word limit was reached. This is from Deborah Bagley. Dear Mayor Mashburn and City Council members, as a black citizen of Simi Valley, I understand how 4 of you can say there's no systemic racism in Simi Valley because you have grown up with white privilege. Open your minds and heart to what is going on in the world, this country, and this city. At the last council meeting, 7/27/20, you asked Chief Livingston, have you had any report of racism? Mayor, it happens. It's ingrained in some white officers. Black men are harassed in Simi Valley. Most people of color know this happens all too well. You commented, very little racism in Simi Valley. How much is very little? In a city of over 100,000, are you satisfied with very little? Why don't you talk to some people of color or create a commission and really look at the problem? How about your council get some, in quotes, sensitivity training to truly understand why people are so upset with Mike Judge? Councilwoman Ruth Luevanos was exactly right about the proclamation presented. The proclamation is a sham. Where is the meat behind the proclamation? Training, policies, etc. Stop denying what is happening in this time in history and see what others are expressing and lead Simi Valley on the right side of history. My black son left 24-Hour Fitness on Madera to get a cold drink at the 7-Eleven. A description of the suspect who was harassing the owner was given prior to the officers arriving at the scene. My son was pulling into the lot at the same time that the police arrived, and the word count has been reached. Kyle Ballard. My name is Kyle Ballard, lifelong resident of Simi Valley. Mike Judge once again showed his true colors a couple months ago with his inexcusable actions. Somehow, time and time again over the years, this has been excused. We are asking Mike Judge to resign post haste. Mike is a sad embarrassment not only for Simi Valley, but for the LAPD as well. By constantly defending Mike Judge, despite the outcry from your constituents, you are enabling and endorsing this behavior. Not a good look with an upcoming election. Censor Mike Judge. Last meeting, I was let down by the majority of you as our city councils. We have been asking, protesting, emailing, and even meeting with Mayor Mashburn about the systemic racism that exists in our society. Our city is no exception of this nationwide movement. Reading something denouncing racism does squat for actual change in our city. Your constituents want reform and action, not empty nice words. You take Council Member Luevano's statements as an attack when she is understandably dumbfounded and offended by these lackluster moves to take action. We are not okay with keeping this city the way it was. If this city doesn't have a racism issue, why can't I make a comment in our community forums without being subject to all kinds of racist rhetoric, belittlement, or bullying? Maybe listen to what your peer, Ruth Luevanos, has to say about her experiences as a person of color and process it instead of throwing back a knee-jerk defensive argument. Of course, the rest of you don't see racism in the city. You're white. Samantha Cano. Dear Mayor Mashburn, at the last meeting, you asserted, while taking down to and over the only non-white member of the City Council, that racism isn't a problem in Simi Valley. In doing so, you already told every non-white resident that racism isn't a problem here. I can tell you, as a non-white 7-year resident of Simi Valley, that this is simply untrue. As a young woman of color, I have been the butt of plenty of rude comments and jokes, as well as sexual harassment on the basis of my race. My teenage sister has as well. Plenty of non-white teenagers and young adults can tell you stories about their racist experiences here. We need to be listened to. By diminishing the experiences of non-white Simi Valley residents, you're telling us that you really don't care about us very much. However, it's unsurprising that you don't see a problem, because you, as a white man, have never been on the receiving end of it. The old white man on the Simi Facebook forums, hi Robert, can snare, belittle, insult, and make accusations of lying all they want. That doesn't change the fact that we have a problem. The city as a whole might not be racist, but that doesn't mean you can just ignore the racism that does exist here. Start listening to non-white residents, especially if you have any hopes of being reelected this year. Sincerely and still disappointedly, Samantha Cano, 23. Adam Barnett. Defund the police is a dumb idea. Luevanos needs to get her facts straight. Officer-involved shootings have dramatically declined over the last 20 years. Police violence is not what it was. Are all cops perfect? No. But the system is much better than it was during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Defunding the police just gives the bad guys reasons to go out and commit crimes. Chris Boscher. While people from all walks of life commit street crime, some people are still more likely than others to break the law because of their social backgrounds. These social backgrounds include their gender, age, social class, urban, rural residence, and race and ethnicity. Race and ethnicity do seem to be related to criminal offending. In particular, much research finds that African Americans and Latinos have higher rates of street crime than non-Latino whites. For example, although African Americans comprise about 13% of the U.S. population, they account for about 39% of all arrests for violent crime. This disproportionate involvement of African Americans and Latinos in street crime arises largely from their poverty and urban residence. And to say that African Americans and Latinos are arrested more often than other races is due to systemic racism is a cop-out. Racism has not been eliminated, but it is not like it was earlier in the century. From Susan Tesh. Dear Mayor Mashburn and City Council members, I was profoundly struck by something I saw today walking into Rite Aid on Yosemite and Los Angeles. There's a sign on the front door that reads, quote, "Let me be clear, racism, injustice, and intolerance have no home in the Rite Aid organization or in our community," unquote. Signed, Hayward Donegan, President and CEO. You are all very aware there is a perception, many say more than just a perception, that Simi Valley has issues with racism, injustice, and intolerance. It is a dangerous and very harmful to our city to have this perception linger for whatever reason. We need clear leadership from you on this issue, today, right now. Will you, Mayor Mashburn, and you, Mike Judge, and each city council person tonight at this meeting, each verbally denounce racism, injustice, and intolerance? Please do not sidestep this question or pivot from the conversation. Will you say, "Let me be clear, racism, injustice, and intolerance have no home in our community"? Then follow up with action and deeds. Sincerely, Susan Tesh, 32-year resident of Simi Valley. Adam Mark, rioters versus protesters. I was thinking the other day as I was watching Simi's YouTube channel listening to Ruth Luevanos and realized she thinks that rioters are peaceful. Granted, there may be 2,000 people protesting in Portland and a small number of them do some violence, but I don't hear her talk about that. Everyone should be condemning the riots. If Ruth doesn't condemn them, she is condoning them. She asked for a proclamation, got on, and then complained that it was just words. Rioters have killed more people than the cops in the last year. When has being a victim become something to be proud of? Everyone is now a victim unless you are white, married, and can take care of your own expletive. Delaney Moss. It's been a pleasure watching the last two meetings and not seeing Mike Judge sitting on the dais. If only his absence were permanent. Still waiting on that resignation, Mike. Next, to disavow racism in the community but not punish the most problematic and racist council member is nonsensical and daft. Ruth said it best. It's disingenuous and hypocritical. It's hardly a resolution. Even more shocking than this council's continued inaction was Keith Mashburn's declaration that Simi has very little racism. Maybe you would think otherwise if you actually listened to one woman of color on the council who actually has personal encounters with racists. Also, Keith, if you recall from kindergarten, interrupting is not part of being a good listener. You really need to work on that. Additionally, to minimize racism by classifying it as knuckleheads, making dumb moves, is just plain irresponsible. The proper word is racist, not knucklehead. Elaine Lister. Systemic racism does not mean that every institution in America is racist. Did you know that unemployment rates for people of color are significantly higher than white people? Or that the median wealth of white households is 10 times that of black households? Or that people of color are incarcerated at a much higher rate than white people, despite having similar crime rates along ethnic groups? None of that is coincidence. It's systemic racism. Watch the Dear Simi Valley video on YouTube. Listen to your constituents. Make a greater effort to educate yourselves. Do better. Danny Newton, Mayor Mashburn, and City Council members. Being born and raised in Simi Valley and being a product of Simi Valley schools, I was blind to the ignorance, bigotry, and blatant racism that members of this community encounter on a daily basis. My naivety, along with the privilege I have due to the color of my skin, shielded me from the struggles, microaggressions, and hate that BIPOC in our city lived through. For this reason, I can relate to your inability to understand the very real cries for help and demands for change that many of us are demanding. To be ignorant is one thing, but to dismiss the struggles and racism that a large portion of our constituents continuously experience is wrong. How can you tell the members of your community that their experiences are untrue? How can you blame the regular racism that members of your community encounter on only a few knuckleheads? In the last week, there have been 2 major racist incidents in the city you lead. The first happened to a new member of our community who was minding her business and walking her dog. This woman was accosted by a male Simi Valley resident and was called a rat-eating and a dog-eating Asian expletive that wants to be white. The second incident happened just 2 days ago. An elderly Latina woman was attacked in her home. The man broke into the house and attacked her, brought an aluminum baseball bat, and screamed, "Expletive, expletive, white power, white power." Are you going to try to blame these verbal and physical attacks on the attackers being knuckleheads? Maximum words met. Keith Grover, to whom it concerns, I am not a boomer. I am just a Gen Xer. I am not going to lay down and let you millennials hand to me and my children a socialist government. Absolutely not without a fight. I am here to tell you, you who are the millennials and those who are not, you are being duped. The promise of socialism is a literal and figurative dead end. It is dangerous. It squashes individualism. It crushes the human spirit. It raises collectivism. It makes the state greater than all of you. Your needs, your wants, your life's purpose will soon be seen as inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. Your individuality will be submerged into the greater good. You may ask, what determines the greater good? Not you. The Central Committee of the People does. But you say, this is a democratic socialism and not communism. Well, yes and no. Socialism is the start. As Vladimir Lenin so aptly said, the goal of socialism is communism. He was right. That is the goal. Socialism is only a stepping stone towards communism. So do we want to continue comparing ourselves to countries that are smaller than New York City, and use them as a model for a country of more than 340 million people? Big government is not the answer. It is the problem. The Marxist argument is a big government argument. Our country and my ancestors have fought wars to maintain our Constitution. Keith. Thomas Anderson. Simi Valley isn't racist. You are a fool if you think it is. People talk about hate speech as if it was the same as hanging someone. 60 years ago, people were lynched, black churches were burned. That was horrible, and we need to admit that. Saying words that hurt your overly sensitive feelings isn't racism. Systemic racism are words the left is using to try and control you. Brett G. The only racist I see is Ruth. She only wants to talk about race. Get over it. The USA is the greatest country the world ever produced, the most diverse. It provides the best opportunity for people of all colors. If it wasn't such a great place, why people from other countries risk their lives trying to come here? Spencer Hale, regarding Ruth is crazy. How did we elect such a nutball? I mean, seriously, she is bat expletive crazy. Guy Salas, regarding Mike Judge, you have my support. Is a great council member, so he laughs at jokes that are off color. Geez, we need to lighten up. To call a meme hate speech and try to take a good man down for it is disgusting. What is hate speech anyways? Who dictates what I can say and what I can't say? People have gotten way too sensitive in the last 50 years. Jan Glassband. Good evening, City Council members and Mayor Mashburn. All of you know me. I've been a resident of Simi Valley since 1981. In my capacity as an arts advocate, organizer, and event developer, as executive program director of the nonprofit Simi Valley Cultural Association and artistic director of Actors Repertory Theater of Simi, my colleagues and I have made a considerable investment over the past 30 years in helping to build a community that enriches the lives of Simi residents of all cultures, ethnicities, and gender identities by promoting diversity and inclusion through education and artistic endeavor. In our tenure as arts providers at the Cultural Arts Center over the past 25 years, ARTS, A-R-T-S, has produced multiple musical productions that have featured either a predominantly Black or widely diverse cast of actors of all ethnicities. During each and every one of these productions, there have been reports by our actors of multiple incidents of harassment, racial profiling, verbal attacks, and even threats made by locals directed toward Black actors from LA and the Valley while coming to and leaving Simi. There is a police report, in fact, made during our production of The Wiz a few years ago, where our costumer, a Black man, was actually chased down and threatened with bodily harm by 3 knuckleheads, as Mayor Mashburn calls them, in a pickup truck after leaving a cast get-together at TGI Fridays. I understand that it's uncomfortable to confront something as ugly as racism, but denying that it exists or diminishing and dismissing the seriousness of the issue by referring to those who commit these offenses as knuckleheads is, respectfully, not giving true weight to a dangerous disease that needs to be eradicated from our community. Word limit has been met. Corey Smith. Mayor Mashburn recently said that Simi Valley, we do not have a problem with racism, but there are some knuckleheads in Simi. He's right. I think he would have rather called them expletive, but was being politically correct. Being an expletive isn't limited by skin color. All races have them. We need to denounce expletives, not racist. If a guy calls me an expletive N-word and I call him an expletive cracker, we are both being expletives. Doesn't that mean we are both racist? Now, if he were to shoot me because of the color of my skin, then maybe he is an expletive racist. But is he any more of an expletive racist than Corey Ali Muhammad's man who said he was fed up with racism against Black people and shot several people, killing 4 white men because they were white? Did he kill them because they were white? This quote from him seems so. When I walked up to the truck, I saw a Mexican driver and a white guy, Muhammad said. I didn't want to target the driver because he was Mexican, so I shot the white dude. We are not 100% over judging people by their skin color, but we are the least racist nation on earth.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 5A, City Council member comments regarding public statements. Mr. Mayor, you may begin 5A.
Okay, Councilmember Litzner.
Let me start with a statement. Let me be clear, racism, intolerance, and injustice has no place in Simi Valley, and I believe all 5 council members would support that statement. I appreciate all the many diverse comments that we received. Thank you for taking the time to engage and be part and express your concerns and desires. I want you to know that I did watch Dear Simi Valley several times at length and look forward to visiting with the members that made that film. With regards to the comments about systemic, I still stand by the statement that Simi Valley is a community that desires good, that desires to be inclusive, and wants to embrace everyone that lives here. Now, I do believe that there certainly are people who make poor, bad, racist, wrong choices, and I don't believe anyone here wants to tolerate them. But going back to the statement that everything's systemic, in fact, I think even Jan Glasban made the statement very well as she just talked about the varied performances that we have at the Cultural Arts Center. For instance, that shows an institution in our Simi Valley that does its best to be all-inclusive. I think that by nature, we desire to be inclusive. Many of you maybe don't know that I have a multiracial family. I have children that are of Hispanic heritage. I have a wonderful African son-in-law. I would not say that there's never, ever been inappropriate activities with my children. I've seen it on both sides. I will tell you in school.
Councilmember, you're about it.
My time's up. Okay.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I've seen unkind things to all my children, white, Hispanic, and black. The reality is we can and will do better. I think that we should just continue to work together, but recognize that we have a city that cares. And the one thing I will say is I think that maybe someone else will address this. I would look forward to our chief speaking to the Saturday crime that several referenced. I'd like more information about that. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Kavanaugh.
Sorry, I wasn't expecting to go next. Thank you. I also agree and stand by that racism, intolerance, and injustice do not belong in Simi Valley. I think that is something the entire council believes in and will do our utmost to work with. I do understand people are experiencing racism. It's not a perfect world. And I would hope that anybody that is around would stand up for them. I know I've done that in the past. I would also hope that we can teach people that it's not the way that Simi Valley wants to be known as. It's not the way we want to act. It's not the community that we want to be. And I think it's going to take time for us to understand everything that's going on. And I think patience and education and assistance with people and having those difficult conversations. I know I've done that a few times already with a few people. And it does open up your minds and your thought process in different ways that you may not have actually looked at before. So I'm glad that we are receiving comments from people expressing their concerns, sharing these with us. It gives us that ability to listen, to try and work something out and to help them in everything that they do and everything that we can do to make this a better place for all of our community members. I also wanted to talk about the PD. I know we have a very strong and very good police department. The comments about the filing of charges, I know we'll let the chief handle that. There are sometimes different requirements in order to file different types of charges. I know that. Like in banking, we have to prove intent to show fraud. So that could be part of it, but that's not my decision. That's the police department. And I know we have a strong district attorney's office too here in the Ventura County. So I'm sure they will do whatever they can and we'll listen to what our chief has to say. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Luémanos.
Thank you, Mayor. I think my actions demonstrate that I will not tolerate injustice. I will not tolerate racism. I will not tolerate bigotry and misogyny. I will not tolerate any of those things. And I don't have to say it because I live it. I walk the walk. I don't just talk the talk. And I've been asking for recognition and reform from the City Council to address the issues. Every single one of the comments that we got tonight from public comments addressed issues of racism, talked about the attacks that are happening from people just walking their dogs. And it's no coincidence that these are happening against women of color because we have racism and misogyny that are intersecting here in our city. And we need to take a stand. We have to be active anti-racist. It's not enough to say that you just stand against it. You actually have to do something about it. We have to examine our policies. We have to look at why this is happening in our community and how we stop it. It's not enough to say, let's be nice to each other. We have to actively act when we see someone acting in that way, acting and harassing women of color. We have to do something about it. We cannot simply say, well, we're against it and we don't believe in it, because that's not enough when a Latina girl or an Asian mom is being harassed, or when parents don't feel safe that their daughters can ride their bikes down the street because they're black or brown or Asian. So we have to take an active role. We have to take an active stance, and that begins by calling out our fellow councilman on the dais who has consistently done things that degrade and dehumanize women of color. And if this council wants to act, and if they believe truly, then we will act on the on censuring Mike Judge. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Judge. Mayor Pro Tem Judge.
I think he's dropped off.
He's gone. I'll go ahead while you're trying to find him. First of all, I, like the lady so well said in her email, I denounce racism, intolerance, and injustice, and there's no place for it in this city. And I will stand against it, and I'll stand tall against it and firm against any of those. I think one of the emails said that my term knucklehead, it's being used and saying I'm making light of it. No, I can't say what I would like to say. It wouldn't be correct for me to say it on the dais. It wouldn't be politically correct. And it was a term that I came up with that I thought would be much better than the term I would like to use to describe anybody that commits racism, intolerance, or injustice against anybody. So, thank you. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem Judge.
I have no comments on the public statement.
It sounded like you said he had no comment.
Do you want to comments to the public comments? Do you have any?
No comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Next
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 6, the consent calendar, and there are no resolutions for consideration.
I move to approve item 6.
Second.
Consent item number 1.
Second?
Okay, motion and second, call for the vote.
I vote yes.
You were prepared, Ryan.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, there are no items tonight for agenda item 7, continued business. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 8A, and this is the item that was pulled during agenda item review this evening to be delayed for a future meeting.
Let me, if I can ask just one question. Councilmember Luevanos, you're looking for the background on the creation of the CAC, is that correct?
Yes, because, well, and I don't want to violate the Brown Act. So I can give you more details afterwards, but I don't want to go into details now and violate the Brown Act.
Okay. We will redo the item to cover your comments.
Thank you so much.
So, just so I'm clear, so it'll go on a future agenda item?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we don't need to address it on 9?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is 8B, review and approval of the steps to implement the transition to the new Neighborhood Council district boundaries and consideration of an ordinance shortening terms of certain Neighborhood Council Executive Board members and a finding of exemption from the California Environmental Quality Act. And Emily Habib is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. On June 29th, 2020, the City Council elected to modify the current Neighborhood Council boundaries, effective November 1st, 2020, to match the new City Council district boundaries. Staff was directed to return to the City Council with steps to implement the transition to the new Neighborhood Council district boundaries. The transition includes a recruitment to fill the seats for the term that will begin on November 1st, 2020. Executive board member terms are for 24 months upon appointment. However, in order for upcoming recruitments to remain in the alternating schedule of occurring every 8 months, these new Neighborhood Council Executive Board members would serve a 20-month term that would end on June 30th, 2022. As a result of proposing terms shorter than 24 months, the City Council will need to consider adopting an ordinance to modify the terms for this Neighborhood Council Executive Board cohort. The following alternatives are available to the City Council. Alternative 1, introduce an ordinance to reduce the length of terms of office from 24 months to 20 months of those Neighborhood Council Executive Board members appointed to terms beginning on November 1st, 2020. Number 2, by motion, transfer continuing Neighborhood Council Executive Board members from their current Neighborhood Council district to their new Neighborhood Council district, effective November 1st, 2020, or provide alternative direction. Staff recommends alternatives 1 and 2. This ends the presentation, and staff is available to answer any questions.
Okay, questions of staff?
No, I think I already asked the question, but just to make sure that because it's a long period of time, from the time they interview to November 1st, so there will, just to clarify, that staff will be reaching out to them to make sure they still qualify to be representatives of that neighborhood council?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Kavanaugh.
I just had a quick comment. I just wanted to compliment you, Emily, on this report, giving us all this information. It was nice to see who's moving from what council to the next, so that we have an idea of how many people we have that have experience, and that how many we're going to have vacant, and then their terms. So that was very nice. So thank you.
Councilmember
Litzner.
That's all right. I know you know my name. It's okay.
I just mask.
It does it. It does it.
Blame it on the mask. That's the new thing.
That's all right. Let me understand something. This is asking us to introduce, to have an ordinance possibly that would shorten just those that get appointed in November to a 20-month term. So as an ordinance, does that mean we have to come back and vote on it again? Or is this an emergency ordinance? I'm trying to understand how this works.
It'll need a second reading.
It will need a second reading,
That's
correct.
And this is the introduction today.
As
it's set out in the staff report, it would be introduced and then voted on again, probably.
So if we pass this, it will need to come back to us again as a second reading.
Yes.
So we move this tonight
I understand.
and don't vote.
Correct. You just
But-
introduced for first reading.
It's somewhat traditional if you do both the alternative. Sometimes the council votes and technically the introduction was voted on, but it's harmless if you do that.
Okay.
Okay. So I do have a couple more questions then. Because initially, as I read through this, I was concerned that we were leaving one council. What's very apparent is that many of our neighborhood council members, although they were in 2, 3, and 4, or 1, 2, and 3, really, when it matched up with the city councils, became city council District 4. So I was very interested that we have a full 13 in District 4, but like District 3, we end up with 3 people. So I guess my question is that initially I was concerned as I looked at it and thought, okay, if we only go with 5 people with District 3, that gives us 8 people to do the work for a while. And with new districts, it might be, we might want the Gainful Employment Act and might want to have larger districts. So initially, as I looked at this, I was going to make a motion that we consider suspending that 13 limit for a year and a half as we right-sized these councils. And I had a whole schematic drawn up. But in order to do that, it'd have to be done by ordinance because it's in the code. And so
That's correct.
if I were to make that motion, if I understand correctly, and I'm not sure that I'm going to make that because as I look at it closer, but if I were to make that motion, it would have to come back to us and it would have to pass by 4/5. Is that correct?
No, just a majority.
Yeah, and
Majority.
if you
If
had
it was
the-
an emergency ordinance, it would have to be 4/5.
That's correct.
It's urgency, but I mean, and I'm not suggesting that you or anyone do that, but you could amend this ordinance right here prior to introduction.
Because part of my reason, originally I thought, well, if everyone serves for 2 years, why should we shortchange all of these applicants and make it 20 months? But if they were to serve the full 24 years, yet we went with a regular February 28th, October 31st, June 30th, the timeframe, if we were to do that, then we would exceed our 13, if we would allow those people to be appointed, it would exceed that 13 limit. I think I'm disinclined, given how difficult it would be, I'm disinclined to try to toy with that. So I just want you to know that. But I had this whole schematic drawn out, how we were going to maximize all these wonderful people who have applied. But at this point, I think I will go away from that. Let me just ask you about the next 2 months. Obviously, we are at the beginning of August. We have September, we have October. This will go into effect November 1st. Do our neighborhood councils meeting currently as constituted right now? Will they be meeting in September? Will they be meeting in October?
That's unknown at this point. Due to the COVID pandemic, we are meeting by Zoom, obviously. However, the current policy is to only meet when there is a development project to be reviewed. So right now, not every neighborhood council is meeting every month. And that's on a monthly basis because we don't necessarily know which development projects will be coming forward each month to be reviewed prior to going to Planning Commission.
Okay. And if they were to meet, they would meet not as we see this November 1st rubric, they would meet as they are constituted now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question? Thank you. You said that neighborhood councils only ever meet when there's a development in that neighborhood council area?
No, only during the pandemic. Normally, they meet 10 months out of the year. June and December are typically dark. However, if they do have a development project that they need to hear in June or December, they will meet. So I have had councils meet 11 months, 12 months out of the year. But only during the pandemic are they only meeting if there's a development project.
Well, and let me clarify, if there is no development project, the neighborhood council will meet for an informational report on code enforcement or something else that may be happening just as an informational report. So they're not meeting on any particular topic that needs to be covered. If the council were to send something to the neighborhood council, they certainly could meet. But right now, in order to keep development moving, we're having them, in making sure they meet if there's a development project. If there's no reason for them to meet other than just hearing an informational project, we're respecting their time and not bringing them back together.
I guess my concern is that I would think that because we're in a pandemic, that we should be meeting with the neighborhood councils to disseminate the information about what the city is doing during this pandemic. I think it's even more important for them to meet now and not just only meet because there's a development, because business owners are scared, residents are scared, there's a lot of stuff that's happening, and I think now is the time when we need to meet. Even if it's via Zoom, I think we need to disseminate the information. Not everyone shows up, even via Zoom, to all of our city council meetings. And the developments sometimes don't just impact people where they live in terms of their residence, but where they work as well. So, for example, if there's a project on Topo and Alamo, you may not be in that neighborhood council, but you may work down the street, and that may impact you. So you may not get to, have input on that. And I think that's one of the things that I've heard in terms of frustrations, that you don't get to give input. Although I know it's open to everyone, and I know that anyone can go to any neighborhood council meeting. I've never seen anyone say, prove that you're a resident here. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So anyone can go to any
People
neighborhood
attend
council.
multiple neighborhood council
Okay.
meetings.
But I would think that right now, and if we, so are you saying that we haven't had any neighborhood council meetings since the pandemic happened? Except for developments?
That there has not been a need to get them together. That's correct.
Well, we did have 2 meetings in July. That's when we started meeting again. We met in March. April, May, and June were dark. And then we began to meet again via Zoom when there is a development project. And there were 2 in July. And there will be Neighborhood Council 2 tomorrow night, and that will be our meeting in August.
So residents through the neighborhood councils haven't found out about the business program that the city passed, the residential, the rent assistance, the moratorium on evictions, because not everyone is tech savvy.
Let me just, pardon me, Councilmember, let
Yeah.
me just make sure the tie between what the council's doing and the discussion, I just got to, for the Brown Act, make sure that there's a tie between what
Oh,
is.
yeah, no, I just want to make sure we do have neighborhood council meetings, that we're not saying we're not going to have any, because that's our tie from the community to us and from us to the community is the neighborhood council meeting. So I would like for those to continue.
We can look at topics for the next 2 months and disseminate information, not a problem.
Thank you. And I'll tie it in. The reason it ties in is because if people think there's not going to be any meetings, why would they be involved from now until November? Let's just not be involved in neighborhood councils at all. If you don't care about developments, you wouldn't be involved. And you might not want to even apply to be on the executive board. That might prompt people to just drop out of, even applying for the executive board committees for the neighborhood councils. And that's why, I want to make sure it's not just about development, that neighborhood councils are the conduit of communication between the city and the communities and vice versa, from the communities to us, so that we can hear what their concerns are, and vice versa. We can let them know how it is that we're supporting them. So I know it's difficult, but I know that, especially some of our seniors and, people that are not tech savvy, people that are just, not familiar with how it's happening or what's going on in the city, it would be nice to have those Zoom meetings, because they can also call in, even if they're not familiar with Zoom, but you can call in and get the information. And I just want to make sure that we have continuity and not discourage anyone from participating in our civic government. Thank you.
So make the motion.
Yes, I move to introduce an ordinance to reduce the length of terms of office from 24 months to 20 months of those neighborhood council executive board members appointed to terms beginning on November 1st, 2020. I move to transfer continuing neighborhood council executive board members from their current neighborhood council district to their new neighborhood council district effective on November 1st, 2020.
Second.
Okay, motion.
Before we take a vote, I'd like to read the reading of the ordinance, please. Ordinance number 1311, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley, reducing the term of office for certain neighborhood council executive board members and determination that the action is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second?
I motion.
Motion and second by
Councilwoman Kavanaugh makes the second.
Okay, call for the vote. Mike, Judge, do you hear us?
I hear you. I'll vote yes.
Okay, thank you.
The motion passes unanimously.
Maybe he has a bad internet connection.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is 9A, City Council member reports.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Habib, thank you for a great report. The staff report was very good. I'm sorry, I just wanted to thank you for it. I didn't mean to call you back. But if you want to sit there, go right ahead. Okay, reports. We'll start with Councilmember Luevanos.
Yes, I will, since I'm going first, I'm sure we have all diligently attended the weekly Ventura County elected officials COVID-19 briefings. So I've been doing that every Wednesday, just to find out what's happening.
Very close.
On Monday, August
Ordered
3rd,
your LED lights for the patio.
Ordered.
Mute.
on Monday, August 3rd, I attended the National League of Cities Cities Are Essential webinar, and we are part of the California League of Cities, so it's really important that we tie into what's happening on a national level and advocated. So, I did advocate, and I know that City Manager Brian Gabler and the whole City Council signed off on a letter asking Congress for funding for our cities. It's really, really essential and really, really important because the funding so far has not funneled down to us as municipalities, and we're the ones that are on the front line. So it's really important if you get the opportunity to let your, elected officials know in DC that we need funding. We need funding for our cities. We're the ones that are here, helping the residents, helping the businesses, and we're on the front line, and we need that funding for municipalities, and we have yet to receive it. So it was really important for me to be on that webinar and know that we need to advocate on behalf of our city of Simi Valley. On Wednesday, August 5th, and through Friday, August 7th, I attended the NALEO conference. That's the National Association of Latino Elected Officials. And one of the things that they highlighted is that the census is going to end sooner, 1 month sooner than what it was originally going to end. So it's really important that everyone is counted. If you've been postponing it, if you've been waiting, if you said, I'll get to it later, now is the time. If you do not have access to a computer, you can do it on a phone, you can go to the library, you can come to City Hall. A lot of the nonprofits are offering computers where you can do the census. It's available in 17 different languages online. There is no excuse not to fill out the census. I just want to remind everyone, this is how we get funding for our cities. And again, funding is really important right now, especially because of the pandemic and the economic downturn. So, and this is funding, it's $2,000 per person every year for the next decade. That's $20,000 per person. So we're talking millions and millions of dollars. That's money that we use to pave our roads, to make sure that we have critical infrastructure like our sewage and our water and our hospitals and our schools. So please, 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 if you have not filled out the census, everybody counts. Your abuelita counts, your cousin counts, your neighbor, your best friends, count. Everybody counts, okay? So make sure that you fill out the census. I want to thank the city staff who did the census caravan on Saturday. So if you haven't already filled out the census, please, the deadline is not going to be in October. It's going to be earlier than that, so please, September. So please fill out the census. It's really, really important that everyone is counted. And people that are at risk of not being counted are single parents, and I know you're busy, but you got to fill it out. We tend to not count our babies, so any baby that was, born counts. If they're 3 months old, they were just born last week, they count them, okay? Please count everyone. And then on Friday, August 7th, I attended the PCB AHA Latino Scholars Luncheon, and there was a wonderful book that was presented, and it's on it's called The History of Segregation, and it was written by a UCLA scholar who has knowledge of Ventura County, grew up in Oxnard, and it's a wonderful, wonderful book talking about the history of segregated schools in this community in Ventura County. I highly recommend that you read it. And it's also wonderfully inspiring to see so many young people that are up and coming, doing so many wonderful things in the community, from taking meals to our seniors, taking meals to our farm workers, sewing masks. We had Girl Scouts that were sewing masks, 6-year-old Girl Scouts that were sewing masks for farm workers, which I thought was just amazing and phenomenal. And I want to thank everyone that has done their part during this pandemic to reach out to those who are lacking in food or lacking in, attention, who are missing their families, who have been isolated since February, since March. Thank you to all of you that have donated canned goods to our seniors. Thank you for all of you checking on your neighbors. Thank you for all of you that are wearing your masks and socially distancing, and I know that it's a difficult thing to do, but I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, those of you who are thinking of your neighbors and thinking of this community and how we can end this pandemic so that we can get back to doing the things that we all want to do. And thank you for that. That's my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Lipster.
Thank you. As Councilmember Luevanos mentioned, we have all been listening with great attention to the Wednesday elected official weekly briefings, and so I appreciate that ongoing meeting. I wanted to mention another meeting that I also attend on Wednesdays in the afternoon, and that's our Business Recovery Task Force meeting. Attended that on the July 29th and also attended that on August the 5th. It was particularly instructive, the meeting that we had most recently on August 5th. In attendance was Assemblymember Christy Smith and representatives from Senator Henry Stearns and Assemblymember Jackie Irwin's office. And basically, we had a frank discussion about businesses in Simi Valley, and there were some actual case studies of what has been businesses that have been harmed, that may be disappearing because of some of the requirements that have been placed on them to open and then to close and then to move outside, et cetera. And so it's been a very frank discussion. One of the things I want to make sure people are absolutely aware of is the statistics to be found on vcemergency.com. You can get a sense of where we are as a community. And one of the things that was pointed out with great clarity, and this was presented by Joel Angeles, who is the first assistant to, or as the head chief of staff, for Supervisor Bob Huber. I'm sorry, I've got to get all the titles correct. Thank you. He spoke at length about some of the metrics that are being used to determine whether or not we can move forward with our businesses. And there's one metric that I find very disturbing, and I think he also pointed out that it's a bit arbitrary. And so I wanted to just actually share with you the follow-up letter that I wrote to these representatives, and they responded, they would look at it a little more closely, because I want people to be aware that we are concerned. We want our businesses open. We want them to do so in a safe manner. We want people to be employed, but we want to do so in a safe, healthy manner. And so I just want to share with you a little bit of the conversation in this letter that I wrote. Dear Senator Stern, thank you for having Nick attend our Business Recovery Task Force meeting today. We very much appreciate the time he took to listen and contribute to the discussion. Yes, this was a meeting of the Business Recovery Task Force, but I believe the best way to facilitate recovery is by actually helping businesses open in a safe, sustained manner and return to profitability. Yes, as was mentioned by several, the Federal HEROES Act can help unemployed workers, but the lasting solution is to allow people to work in a safe manner. So let me go on to explain what this committee was asking them to investigate. I'll be brief, but I wanted to synthesize the argument of the state reopening qualifier that I find the most troubling. Quite simply, it is the requirement of the 14-day case rate be less than 100 cases per 100,000 residents. Basically, certain businesses are not allowed to operate or must find a way to operate outside because the number of COVID cases in Ventura County is not less than 1/100th of 1% of the county's population. That is less than 0.01%, not 0.1% or 1%, but less than 1/100th of 1%. That is an arbitrary line drawn in the sand with little statistical significance. As was shown on the slide, Ventura County's current rate is 100. Well, I should tell you, I pulled up the rates today. Our current rate, the only qualifier that keeps us from moving forward is the 14-day case rate per 100. And as of today, it's at 133. The goal is 100, so we're getting closer and closer. But the point that I was making is that the state could just as easily said 200 cases per 100,000 or less than 0.02%, in which case we have always been in the safe range. But again, this is an arbitrary, insignificant statistical hurdle. The meaningful metrics are the number of hospitalized, the number of ICU patients, and the ability of the county to care for these patients and possibly more. As was explained, Ventura County has continued to have positive metrics in all other areas, and I want our community to understand this. The state is, and so I just wanted to be certain Joel Angeles' point about testing was clear as it relates to that number. The more tests you have, the more cases you will find, asymptomatic or otherwise, and by its very nature, the number of positive tests will go up. Ironically, the 100 per 100,000 metric is a disincentive for the county to make testing readily available. To the county's credit, they have still done a thorough job of making free testing readily available regardless of this unintended consequence. Ventura County has been outstanding with its testing numbers, which I applaud, but as explained, that diligence has been unduly harmful, I believe, to our struggling businesses. In no way am I advocating for disregard of the important safety protocols, masks, social distancing, hand washing, etc. Those are all critical. But please, any influence you might have on the governor's health metrics, specifically the one discussed, would be greatly appreciated. And so the response I received from the senator's office was, well, we will look closer at that, because if that is really true, which it is, the only metric that we don't meet is that one. And I think it's because our testing is so good that that's been affected. So I just wanted people to know that we desire people to have an opportunity to make a livelihood, and we're concerned. So that was part of the meeting that took place on August the 5th. The one last thing I wanted to mention was August 7th, the Simi Valley Youth Council had an open mic night, and they were fabulous. I want you to know, if you missed it, it's on Facebook, and I even watched it after the fact. You can watch it later. But our youth here in Simi Valley are doing a wonderful job of finding ways to be creative and do positive things even while they are at home quarantining and having to perform on the internet. And so, in fact, I want you to know it even caused me to pull out my ukulele after watching that performance. So we have some outstanding youth, and thank you to Kristen Tignat for helping make that happen. And so that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have attended all the county briefings on the COVID crisis that we are in. I've also attended a bunch of briefings from the city manager telling me where the city is at. SCAG has been dark, so I have VCPC been experience. So I have really nothing to report, other than the fact that I want to talk to our business owners out there in Simi Valley and say, look, I understand you're hurting. I understand that there's a lot of problems. The county, the city is trying to make, so I'm just going to talk for our city. The city is trying to make the best of what is going on. You will have code enforcement coming out. Code enforcement should be there just to advise you of the county's requirements. That is all they should be doing. If they do anything more, contact our city manager's office and tell them that they are doing more than that. Our city council, or I should say, our city is with you. We're trying to make this, we understand the problems you're having as far as businesses. I don't know where else to go from there. Our governor said that after we did this 13 or 15 days of lockdown, we'd be better. Apparently we're not, because he hasn't lifted the lockdown yet. I don't know where to go from there. I have no idea what's going on, because I'm not a doctor, and none of our council members are doctors, although they rely on the basis of science for the things that we want to do. All I would tell you right now is business owners in Simi Valley, you're just going to have to deal with this as best you can right now. That's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I obviously missed the last meeting, so I was on vacation with my family, and we followed all the proper protocols, family only. I did attend all the Wednesday elected calls, even on vacation. I went into the nice air-conditioned house and took the call. On June 18th, I attended the EDC board meeting, and on July 2nd, these are from back before because I wasn't here last meeting. July 2nd, the Rotary Club Simi Sunrise invited me to be a speaker. City Manager Brian Gabler kindly gave me some talking points, which was very nice. Thank you very much. On July 15th, we had our Simi Valley Veterans Task Force. Councilmember Litzter is also on that call. I think we're starting to get an idea of what needs to be done to become a nonprofit, get our foundation, get our status going. And I think we have some people that are really willing to step up and start working on that. Thanks to the city for giving us lists of all the properties and such. So thank you, Sam. That will help us as we move forward on that. It's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to take a little while, especially right now with the COVID going on, but at least we're continuing to move forward. On July 16th, I had our July EDC board meeting. We are dark in August, but since that meeting, I just wanted to share that the EDC, the Economic Development Collaborative for Ventura County, gave out PPE, so personal protective equipment for businesses throughout the county. And it was even on Channel 7 News, I believe, except they identified us as LA County. So we didn't win that one, but they did a very good job of giving away free PPE for our local businesses. And on July 10th, or excuse me, they also, we were talking about the PPP loans. As you know, a lot of our business customers applied for the PPP, customers. I call them customers at work. So a lot of businesses applied for the PPP loans. And I just wanted to let you know that the SBA has still not finalized the forgiveness program. My bank personally got notice about a week and a half ago saying these are the finals, how it's going to work. And then within a couple of hours, it's like, nope, we got changes to make. And some of it has to do with the programming, not so much just what they want to do, it's how to program it and how to get all the interactions working. So it is coming, so keep that in mind. That will be a relief, I think, for a lot of businesses if they have the ability to not have to repay all of those. I also wanted to congratulate Trustee LaBelle and Clerk of the Board Trustee Gibran on not having anyone run against them unopposed. So they will have their next 4 years. So congratulations to both of them. I also, Kareem Gibran had sent an email out to a lot of the electeds regarding a PTA. And it's hard to join all the PTAs because, you know, there's a lot of schools here in town, so you feel obligated, well, if I do this one or if I have kids at one. But he sent one that I thought was kind of special. It was for the Justin Early Learners Academy, which is for our little young ones who possibly have need some additional services or additional assistance. And I thanked him for sending that. I didn't realize they just started their own PTA just for that program. They have 72 students, at least as far as the last email was. And I think it's a great program that our school district provides, and I was happy to support that. And finally, I would just like to say a happy birthday to Fred Baumeister, the director of our free clinic here in Simi Valley. And I hope he had a great day. So that's it for my comments.
Great, thank you. I'm going to use the time to just give some kudos. First of all, to the restaurants in our community who have been, I think, the ones I've been to have done an exceptional job of complying with the COVID requirements and under circumstances that are not great because the rules seem to change almost hourly, you know, and so then they have to keep up with it. And by saying that, with the restaurants, we also have to give kudos to our code enforcement staff that's been going out and working with these restaurants and trying to understand the requirements and educating the restaurants and showing them how to become compliant. And I think that's what has been incredibly impressive because I happen to have received some negative calls, and it turns out it was not our inspectors, it was this bigger organization north of us, their inspectors. And our inspectors would go in the next day and I'd get a call back from the owners of the restaurant saying how smoothly and how helpful the code enforcement officers from the city were. So I think that's working out quite well. Those of you that know me very well know that I used to frequent the corner bakery on they even claimed I had an office there. But the reality is, great reality, is this morning the corner bakery reopened. And I was really worried that it wasn't going to reopen. So that was good news, but I didn't go. Yet. But anyway, and that brings up something when we look around, especially us council members, because we're having contacts with these people when they're having something negative happen or they need help, they want us to look into something, they want us to get with code enforcement and find out about this and that. Start looking at what are these restaurants doing that's innovative, because we're doing things as a city that's, I feel, somewhat innovative that I think will carry on long after the COVID issue goes away, or at least mostly away, where we're reopened. The Zoom meetings, things like that. I think there's going to be a lot more innovation, and also the business community is going to be doing things that they wouldn't normally do, that they may say, hey, you know what? After this is all over, we want to continue this process. So those are things that we as a council should be looking at on how to help them in the future. And if there are items that we need to get with the planning department or whomever, go through the city manager, of course, but say, this is working out great for everybody, let's work on it. So keep that in mind. Look for innovative ideas to help the business community long-term. Tomorrow night, I'm going to the skate park grand opening ceremony. I don't think it's actually open tomorrow, but the next day it opens officially. And I think that's great because the young adults, children in this community have been asking for a skate park, and especially with Skate Lab moving up to the mall and turning more into a museum, they're a little bit limited now. And so kudos to the Park District for opening up an actual skate park area where kids can go and ride their skateboards. I believe also their little scooters, because I've got a grandson that's telling me he wants to go with me to that grand opening. And I don't think it's because he wants to see me hand a certificate or anything. I think he's hoping he can get on there. So, but at any rate, that's my report. I think as bad as the times we can think they are, it's also a time that we can look for opportunities to be innovative, and we need to do that so we can help our constituency and our business community and, of course, our manufacturing community. And the other thing is, good job being gone for a week, Mr. City Manager. We didn't miss you. Your replacements did a fine job. So, but yeah, great staff, and it was a relatively easy week for those that were not in your shoes. But now those that were in your shoes, maybe it was a little more difficult. So with that, we'll move on to 9B.
Mayor, I have two requests for 9B. The first one is, and I just forwarded this request today, because I just got it today, to Brian Gabler and to Sue Klepper. August 26th is the centennial 100-year anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment of women's suffrage, and the American Association of University Women are asking all municipalities to not only pass a proclamation, and they gave us some language for that proclamation, but in addition to light up City Hall, or at least our flags, with purple and gold. Those are the colors of the suffragettes, the American suffragettes. I don't know if there's money for that, if I need to make a motion that needs to be on a agenda, but it would be nice if we could participate and show, us honoring the centennial, the 100-year celebration of women's suffrage. And I mean, if we have to, I'll donate money for some purple and gold lights. But it would be nice to do that, to show the celebration of that. And we do have a city council meeting on August 24th, so it would be nice if, I'm hoping this is enough time to do that, yeah. Okay. That's my first request.
I don't think that needs to be, that's yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. The second 9B request I have is with regard to business loans. I know you talked, we're all concerned about our businesses. Everyone on this dais is concerned about our small businesses. And even though there has been loans that have been given through PPP, through the SBA, they're just covering the back rent of what is owed. And so I'm talking to a lot of business owners that are saying, I'm going to have to close shop by September, October, November, December, because they're already in arrears for rent. And what I'm hearing is that there's a huge disparity in how commercial tenants are being treated by landlords. Some landlords are saying, we're going to forgive the rent that you can't pay. Others are saying, no, we're just going to continue to pile it on. And so I really want us to intervene as a city and see if there's a way. Other cities are doing it, where they're saying, we're going to give loans to our local businesses that, can be repaid back. And I realize that there is I know that there's a risk involved with that, but I just can't see us not helping our small business owners right now at a point in time when they're just so desperate, and they're just using, I talked to one gentleman who, he got a $23,000 loan. He used it to pay the $19,000 in arrears that he had, and there's not much left except for this month's rent. So I know it's been asked time and time again. Robbie Hidalgo has mentioned it. I would really like to see us move forward. I do not want to wait for the state. I do not want to wait for Congress. I want us to act as a municipality, actively advocating for our small businesses in some way, shape, or form. We cannot let them fail.
Oh, pardon me, Councilmember Livinos.
That's my request.
Okay, just whatever.
I will, the council did approve through the CDBG program loans to businesses and renters, so that we should have that. We're trying to gear that up to be able to loans going out the door this month, by the end of this month. So
Just a correction, is those are grants, aren't they?
Those are grants.
Grants,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I want to make sure we're clear on that.
Yeah, that's grant money that will be going out to businesses and renters to help backfill them. I think we were doing $2,500 grants that we would do about 148 grants. So that's already in place, and we should have grants going out the door this month.
Okay, and the application process and everything is online?
Our staff member has been working on it since the council approved it last month, and we're pretty close to being able to get that out the door.
Okay, because I'm trying to advertise it, but I'm like, we're not ready yet.
I believe me, we're going to advertise the heck out of it. So
Okay,
we will certainly let you know when those are ready to go.
Yeah, but, I know we have the capacity to do that. Other cities have done it, and I think it's a risk worth taking to let our small business owners know that we stand by them.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Tonight, we're going to adjourn, unfortunately, in memory of someone. We've had a couple of nights off, I think, which was nice. But we had a crossing guard, not in the line of duty, but we lost one of our crossing guards. Walter Moeller passed away. So we're going to adjourn tonight in his memory and thank him for his service to the city. With that, thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned.
Hey, Chief, I'm sorry, I just saw your email.
And I was hoping the mayor would ask you to come and maybe share that at the podium, but anyway.